All right, it is time to start. I see that we have a lot of things coming in here into the Menti. So super nice to see that. We have most kind of hovering around the UK, it looks like, or somewhere in Europe. Europe is standing out as quite small here on the map, but we also have some people from the East and also from the Canadian or US East Coast, it looks like. So really, really nice. A few down south too. Super welcome to this webinar today. I am having a little bit of a cold, so if for some reason I sneeze or anything, I excuse myself beforehand. But luckily, I am not the one that is going to be speaking most of the time today. So this session today will be about AI in education, a very hot topic. Is it enhancing or replacing deep learning? So it's going to be hosted by me, Julia. Some of you may have seen me before. I'm an educational advisor here at Mentimeter, but the star of the show today is certainly our guest speaker, Örjan, who will be talking from his expert side. So he will be introducing himself very shortly. For those of you that haven't already, please feel free to pick up your phones and scan the QR code that I've re-added now here in the left corner. Or you can go to menti.com and join with the code that you find up here on the screen. And it's going to be on every slide that we have here today. So if for some reason you joined late or you want to join with another device, you can always do that. So any device that has a web browser can be joined through Mentimeter. Please feel free to use the reaction, send us a heart, a thumbs up, or a question mark if you're really curious about something, and then we know that you're here with us. You can also ask questions to Örjan or me through Mentimeter. You do that by clicking Open Q&A once you've signed in through any device that you want. There you can type in your Menti question and it will pop up here in the right bottom corner. So we will bring questions up continuously. We do moderate them just to make sure we don't have duplicate questions. Ostra, who's just waving, is moderating them from our side today. So don't fret if you don't see your question instantly. It will probably be there very soon. And also feel free to have a look at the Q&A from time to time, even if you don't write your own question, because you will be able to actually upvote the questions that you like the most. And they will pop up first for either me or Örjan here today. And finally, we will record this session. You will get both the recording and the slides sent to you after we end the session today. So it will get to you automatically. You don't have to stress about taking print screens or remembering everything that we say, because you will get the recording afterwards. Great. I think we're quite set up. The agenda for today is that we will do a little bit of an introduction and how to get started or just get ourselves started a little bit. Then Örjan will take over and talk a little bit about thinking is hard and the AI era of learning and sharing his experiences. I will then come in and give some practical examples on how you can use Mentimeter for active learning. And then Örjan will come back in to talk about how you can use AI to enhance and not replace deep learning, because that's what we will be talking about here today. We think it's enhancing and not replacing deep learning. And then we also have some Q&A spread out through the session, so you will have the chance to ask your questions as well. Lovely. But I will hand over to our speaker, our guest speaker today, Örjan. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Julia. Excited to be here. My name is Örjan Flygt Landfall. I am a senior advisor at BI Norwegian Business School in Oslo, where I work with learning technology. Recently, more AI based on how we should handle AI, how we should implement it, and how we can build AI literacy in our programs. Also, I have worked the last 10 years or so in 4 or 5 different higher educational institutions, working either as a faculty, teaching pedagogy, by using technology, or advising other faculty in how they can implement pedagogy and technology in a constructive manner. So, but today I'm going to talk a bit about, I actually changed it to why learning is hard just now. But I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk a bit about AI and how this will affect education and higher education in particular. But I think this will apply for all cases of learning and education. Yeah. But before I get started, I want to have like a check-in with you guys, and see how your perceptions on AI in higher education is. Do you feel concerned, or do you feel optimistic about integrating AI into higher education? So I'm just curious to see where you fall on this scale. Seems like we have a good distribution, that we both have people that are highly optimistic, but also some that are highly concerned, and typically concerned about ethics of AI, over dependence, data protection, etc. So I'm glad to see that we have found ourselves in the middle, and I think we should stay there in the middle, actually. I'm not here to have like an AI hype speech. I'm trying to stay nuanced in these questions. So I think we're just going to jump right into it. So as I said, I'm going to talk about why learning is hard, and I'm going to use that as an angle to talk about why deep learning is more important than ever in education, and what that has to do with technology. So I guess most of you know about this book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a very popular book where he differentiates between two different modes of thinking, two different systems. So we have system one, which is the fast and effortless thinking that requires little attention, it requires little effort, and is doing most of the work, basically. Things that you don't do all the time, but you don't monitor actively. And then you have system two, which you need to connect on when you're doing things more deliberately. And ideal for like complex decisions, problem solving, and it requires much more attention, and it requires much more effort. And both these systems are important for learning. So let's start with system one. System one is important for learning, but most for automation of skills. So you need systems one to automate what you're doing, and it becomes gradually a part of your behavior, basically. It's becoming more intuitive, and it requires less effort. But system two is more for deep learning, when you need to be focused. And take this as an example. This is actually my two-year-old son, Philip. This is when he was 1 year old, and this is literally his first steps. And you can see that he is highly concentrated, obviously using his system two. He's monitoring every movement, trying to balance his heavy head. But now, 1 year later, he doesn't require that anymore. So this has become automated, and he can now use system one for walking and then yell at dogs or something else at the same time. Yeah, so far so good. Both systems are important for learning. But the question is, what happens when we as humans are faced with technologies that offer convenience, that offer high computing power and processing speed, that can make our lives easier and more comfortable? like the internet, like smartphones, like GPS systems, and now also AI. Are we able to collaborate with these technologies, or are we risking becoming too dependent on them? Like these guys, for instance, from the Wall-E movie, basically just living their lives in this chair, being fed by robots and just interacting with that screen all day. I don't think they need the system 2 at all. They can just float around under system 1. And this is actually relevant today. Might be a bit extreme, but we are, and this is a theoretical concept called the age of interruption. And I think we are in the age of interruption in some ways. Moved from the age of information to the age of interruption. And I think everyone can relate to this. And it's about having these constant distractions that is constantly shifting and dividing our attention. Yeah, so what I want to do now is I want to check your, I want you to self-assess how it is to live in the age of interruption. And one way to research this is to research your checking behavior. How often do you think, just give us an estimate, how often do you check your phone each day? I'm very curious about this. I guess we will have a large distribution of answers. Interesting. Yeah, I see that the average is creeping down to around 90, and this is actually based on research, a good average. We have different numbers from different countries, and we have different numbers from different ways of researching checking behavior, but a broad estimate is around 80. So the average person check their phone 80 times a day. So this is actually real. To summarize this, I want to say that superficial use of information technology, like using a GPS when you could have used your brain to find the way yourself, or using Google to find information that you maybe could have, maybe you know from before, or using now AI to write, make decisions, read, whatever. These ways of using information technology may lead to superficial learning. Basically, this could lead to us rely more on system 1, the more comfortable, quick, easy access thinking, and while outsourcing our more careful reasoning to technology, the system 2. Use the system 2 less, actually. However, this concern about new technology isn't new. All through history, like every time we get an information technological revolution, intellectuals start to worry about how this affects our cognitive abilities. An interesting example is that Socrates himself lived at a time where the written language was quite a new technology, at least a common written language. And he questioned whether wisdom could exist at all in a time where people could just write down things that needed to remember or read a book. But he thought that you need to learn from experience and dialogue. And I think his skepticism mirrors some of the skepticisms of AI today. And I think we can agree that Socrates' skepticism to written language was not evident. You can become wise even though you can read a book or write in text. And I think the same will go for AI. Because every week I'm come over new research articles and studies that either alarms us about the consequences of AI. It will impact laziness, decision making, critical thinking, cognitive offloading, basically using AI to do things that we used to use our brains to do before. Or other articles that shows a positive correlation. AI is great for learning. We should implement AI here and there, blah, blah, blah. But I think that discussing whether AI enhances or undermines learning is quite pointless, because learning depends not on the technology itself, but on how we use it. Therefore, I think that we as educators must help students to navigate their use of AI to enhance and not replace learning. In fact, when I talk to students about this, I usually ask them, do you think yourself that you would have learned more if it wasn't for AI? And I usually get this distribution. It's surprisingly or shockingly even sometimes how dependent some students have become on AI. And my hypothesis is that those students saying yes to this question are the students that have low AI literacy. They don't understand how they should use this technology constructively. So they are offloading too much of their abilities to AI, replacing learning. But those students that are saying, no, quite the opposite, I think they are the ones that have cracked the code. They understand how they can use this technology to improve their learning, to learn more in depth, and to improve their problem solving, etc. Therefore, I think AI has two fundamental educational consequences. First, we need to talk about AI literacy and build that into programs. I'm not going to talk about that today. And secondly, we need to focus even more on deep and active learning. And the reason for that is that understanding the subject and the context are essential in order to use AI. What should I ask for? And how can I use a language model in a way that adapt to my need, maybe customize it to my needs, make applications, etc., etc. And then after I asked it for something, how can I assess the output? And how can I use that output to iterate further? For all these stages in the process of using AI and language models, you need to understand what you're doing. And if you're not understanding the subject area that you are learning within, it's useless, basically. So therefore, I think we need to design for deep learning, and that's more important than ever. But what does that mean? For the final part now, I'm going to talk a bit about what deep learning is and what that implies for teachers. We often talk about learning new things, but I think that could be a bit misleading, because learning is nothing magical or like taking a pill that suddenly helps you understand new things. Learning is essentially about using what you know from before and try to use that to understand new things in a new situation. Transfer of learning. Because we never enter a new situation empty-handed. Right now, you are trying to use your brain to make sense of what I'm talking about. So the core of learning is using or transfer what we know from before, something that we learned in a different time and place, and to try to understand new things. Simple as that. Even the best math teacher in the world couldn't teach me to calculate complex algebra in one day or 1 week, because I don't simply have the experience and knowledge to make sense of that situation. Yeah, I think you need to give me at least a year. So deep learning is about giving the learner the right brain tools for transfer. So is essentially a way of learning new things that helps the learner transfer what is learned in school or in any context and use that out there. So to go a bit more theoretical, it's about integrating new learning with prior knowledge and experience, building on what you know from before and not treat information as isolated facts. Secondly, it's about conceptual frameworks. We need to integrate new knowledge meaningfully with good connections. And I think ideas is a good example. So sometimes we talk about ideas that they come up from nowhere, but that's not true. It's you that connected the dots. And the deeper you understand the concepts or subject you're within, the more novel will the ideas also be. And finally, we need to combine concrete examples and underlying concepts. So you need to recognize that each practical example and each incident of something can tell you something about the underlying concept and vice versa. Like the apple that fictionally probably fell into the hand of Newton. He was like, okay, I've seen this many times. It needs to be a pattern here. So there's an underlying concept of all these falling objects, which is gravity. So this is the essential parts of deep learning. And then the final thing is, how can we address that as educators? I think that, first of all, we need to activate students. We need to make them explore, collaborate, reflect, and not merely exposing them for information and leave the learning up to them, as I am doing now. Don't do that. Secondly, you need some conceptual integration. Build on prior knowledge. What do they know from before? And help them see the connections between different concepts. And third, you need some practical relevance. Encourage students to apply concepts in an authentic problems, bridging those concepts to practical examples. Fourth, we need to assess learning for understanding, assess their analytical thinking, knowledge application, etc., not just their recollection of facts. And finally, we need to challenge our students. We need to create a safe space, but we also need to encourage or even maybe force students to make big mistakes, engage in difficult discussions, and exchange constructive feedback to each other. I think that educators, we're not here to make students happy, but we're here to make sure they learn things. And only, let's see, yeah. Remember that, only hard work leads to mastery. So we need to talk to the students, talk about learning, talk about why they should connect their system too. And I think Mentimeter could help us do that in some cases. So that's my cue to you, Julia.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Örjan, for that. And I would love to hear from you. What's your main takeaway from the topics we covered so far? Let's bring those inputs in, and I think we can take some questions potentially in the meanwhile while people are filling that one in. And if for some reason you joined late and you're wondering, how do I join this? I just added your QR code here on the left bottom side, so you can scan that with your phone if you want to put in your input here. But I'm bringing up some questions for, hopefully for you then, Örjan, coming in. Yes, you will be able to review the recording. It will be automatically sent to you after this session today. All right, so Örjan, what strategies can you recommend to design courses that demand students to use their thinking system too, their critical thinking?
Good questions. I think that one thing is about designing the whole course. Then if you think in like learning design terms, I think that we should start, of course, with the learning outcomes, and then make actual decisions based on that. I think that we, for instance, are putting too much weight on student feedback on like the course. How do you think the course was? But we can't just ask that. We need to ask what did you actually learn from? So that's important. Build the course around what you want the students to master. And then for more practical sessions, I think that we need to both build learning environments that encourage students to activate them, and maybe also force them a bit to use their brains as a natural part of any learning context. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, what are the best and worst way how students are using AI in your experience and expertise, Örjan?
That's a good question. I think we should start with the worst. It surprised me often when I've been talking a lot with students about this because I'm curious about how they're using it. And some says that they haven't read or wrote anything in 2 years' time. So I'm actually a bit worried about their like basic competencies on information literacy. But I think those students that are using AI in the good way, in the most constructive ways, they are understanding how the importance of they using what they know, what they understand in all steps using AI. So it's not about, essentially they are not using AI to do something for them. The output will be their work, but they are using AI to support every step on the way, but they are always the human in the loop. They are putting a lot of effort into the first iteration in the prompt, maybe filling it with resources, and then iterating and iterating and iterating, and achieving that human machine collaboration. Yeah.
So maybe like scaling yourself, that's what I'm hearing, using
Yeah.
still your human capabilities, but more scaling yourself through AI and using the things that they can do faster than a human can. Is that a correct assumption from what you mentioned?
Yeah, and not only faster, sometimes I think it could be even take longer, but the result will be improved. You will have utilize more of your brain in that collaboration. It's a bit abstract answer maybe, but in more concrete terms, you can say that if you write a term paper, you use AI for every aspect of all the way, but you're not having one prompt saying, okay, you pass in this and I copy out this. How AI fingerprints are marked in the term paper is impossible to see because it's just a part of it all. Yeah, it's intervened in every aspect, every step on the way.
All right, thank you. Let's take one or two more questions, and there's a lot of them coming in here. So everyone also, please feel free to go into the Q&A and upvote so you get the question that you want answered the most. All right, should we be looking at assessing more human traits in students, student assignments and exams? If so, which traits and how to grade them objectively?
Human traits. I'm just curious what the human traits is. Is that more like general competences or yeah, let's say it's that. So I think that we need to think about how we assess learning, and that's an ongoing discussion in all higher educational institutions, I guess, and look for new ways of measuring learning outcomes. But if traits should be more artificial based assessments on traits. I'm not sure. I think we should use, it depends on the learning outcomes of the course, but maybe we need to think differently about competencies interdisciplinary competencies and general competencies will be more important for the future. At least the Future of Jobs report is telling us that students are less dependent on subject knowledge, but more about how they can use that knowledge, their critical thinking skills, social skills, etc. So maybe that should be more present in the learning outcomes of courses as well, and from there present in exams. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's take one more question and then we will move on. Let's see. We humans, like all living things, are all about conserving energy, so it's natural to go for convenience. I think AI should be controlled more globally so it doesn't spiral out of control.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. And I'm worried about not only I'm also worried about who is going to offload too much and who is going to understand how they can utilize AI for their advantage. And I'm worried about like social equality in our societies. If those with higher educated parents understands how they can use AI constructively, and non-educated kids offload too much, then the difference will increase. But I think we need to do both things at the same time, because the technology is always 10 steps ahead of us. So instead of waiting for this to be controlled, as we, for instance, with social media, I don't know if you know the Anxious Generation book that is really popular these days, about how social media has influenced the Generation Z, and I think we need to help them navigate these waters, and at the same time also take control of how it affects us.
All right, thank you. Let's save some questions for later and let's have a look at the different takeaways here. So we have 59 answers, so quite a lot. So I'm going to live as I learn, and I'm going to use AI to help me a little bit with this, or hopefully live as I learn, depending on how you want to look at it. But I'm going to use convenience for now, and I am going to summarize the answers from all of these, because scrolling through them is going to be a little bit difficult for me here to make sense of all of them. So I'm using Mentimeter AI, and the key takeaways that you have taken so far on this session is that AI enhances our learning. Deep learning is crucial. Tools depend on usage. That encouraging active learning is great, I suppose. And conceptual understanding matters. Would you say that those are good takeaways from your presentation so far, Örjan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Then let's continue. Thank everyone for putting this in, and you will get these slides afterwards, so you can actually scroll through everyone's reflection afterwards and see in detail on the different answers here. So definitely feel free to do that. All right, I'm going to go through a few different ways that you can use Mentimeter for active learning specifically. We've already seen a few examples where we looped you into this webinar a little bit more. But let's imagine this webinar would have been a lecture, and I'm going to ask you some more deeper thinking questions. And I'm going to start off with this one. In your own lectures, how do you continuously apply the assess for understanding point discussed earlier? Let's see what we come up with. And it could be with AI or without AI, but how would you do that in your way? You don't. All right. Also fair point. Group discussions or Mentimeter, you use Menti. Really nice. We will see some more ways of applying Menti to this later. Mind mapping, knowledge reviews, task completion exercises, Mentimeter with a rating scale, very nice. Ask questions, asking students to analyze their learning and apply concepts to existing scenarios. I do see this often, and I think that's a really nice way to really make sure that you activate the second thinking, so to say, that Örjan was talking about. Taking a use case or something that they've been thinking about and then applying or discussing in a group. That's something I've seen been used quite effectively many times. We have asked them out loud, a lot of answers coming in. So I'm going to do another exercise now. I'm going to group them together to see if we see some patterns here. I'm going to use a lot of AI today. So now I'm instead grouping the answers together to see what patterns we get rather than a summary. So the most ways that you do it is through quizzes using Mentimeter. Seems like we have a crowd that really likes Mentimeter, which makes sense. Asking questions also seems to be an important way to do this. Group discussions, yes, that tapped into the one that I highlighted just previously. And case studies, those seem to be the largest groups that you have placed these into. Thank you for sharing. Another thing that I wanted to reflect a little bit on based on what has just been discussed. How does AI influence cognitive processes in these different academic use cases? And I've added the picture here of the different systems for you to remind yourself and look at when you are answering the question. So on to a 2x2 scale with these two parts on the scale, the first one being impact of AI on the activity and cognitive thinking system involved on the other one, please feel free to place these three different use cases. So automated grading and multiple choice tests, generating feedback for written assessments, and personalized learning paths for students. Let's see what we come up with. This is one of my favorite question types that is a bit more advanced and you don't see it that often, but it's really nice to see and apply different topics, use cases, or even different people you could do as well with this. There's going to be even more examples of using slides for deep learning when you get the slides after this session. We will only go through a few that is more related to what we've been talking about today in this webinar, but we have some more generic use cases later as well. All right, so it looks like the one where we have the, well, it's still moving a little bit. The one what has the highest impact on the activity is the automated grading and multiple choice test, but that is a bit lower when it comes to the cognitive thinking system involved. And as I hover over this question, you can actually see the distribution of the answers. It's coming in so many now, so it's getting a little removed away sometimes, but you can see also how the answers are being spread out over as well.
Can I just comment quickly, Julia? I also really like this question type. And what is great about it is also when you did what you just did, hover over the response, let's say that you have been talking about these concepts for 45 minutes with students, and you will see the distribution as we just saw now. That would probably indicate that your students aren't disagreeing a lot or don't understand the concepts, because here you can actually measure how do they understand things in relation to each other. So this is like a great way to test deep understanding, actually.
Really good point. And usually it gives you a distribution. We saw that for a few seconds. I don't know if there's just a small bug or something right now, but usually that pops up here, so that could be good to know. Hopefully a few saw it there for a little while. Lovely. Thanks everyone for sharing. And then I have a final one, also an open-ended question. How could you use Mentimeter to help students with conceptual integration? So more building on prior knowledge and highlighting relationships among concepts. bringing on back the QR code if someone joined late. Case study scenarios, asking for new uses of existing concepts. Relate new concepts to an existing case study. Case studies and scenarios seem to be popping up a lot here. I'm going to remove the QR code now so we can have a look. Quizzes again pops up, and case studies. I can already see here with my human brain that case study seems to be very popular. Let's see what more we get in, and then I can group them together as well. All right, let's put it together and see what the trends are overall. Some of you may still be writing, and it will still be put in there, so for later. Yes, case studies seems like my human brain did somewhat of a good exercise of summarizing the overall answers here. Case studies seems to be the top one, followed by open-ended questions, simulations, and so forth. I can actually click in and go and look into each different group as well if I want to. So under the open-ended questions, I'm curious, what does that mean? So it looks like have them create questions, simulations and open-ended questions, segmentation questions, use extra info, and so forth. Really, really nice. And then scenarios, quizzes. Someone got really inspired by the 2x2 matrix. So good to see that as well. And then we have some other ones here as well. All right. Thank you so much for that. Hopefully that helped you to anchor the learning from this session a little bit further. All right. I will hand back to Örjan, and I believe you will be sharing your screen with us now to show how you can use AI to enhance and not replace deep learning.
Yeah. I was thinking just to show an example of this is more really more about how you can use a language model to design questions that that enhances deep learning. So because I really like how Mentimeter can be used for deep learning, especially when you're when you're outnumbered by your students. It's difficult to have that one-to-one interaction, but then you can use Mentimeter, but it's also difficult to make these questions. So what I did for the faculty at BI was to, let's see, I'm going to window. I made a teaching prompt guide for Mentimeter, and the aim of this is to use AI to create questions that are aimed for deep and active learning. I've written just briefly about what it is, but basically it's about creating questions with no clear answers. Just as Julia showed us now. So I made different prompts for different question formats. So here you see for multiple choice, you have this prompt here. Then you need to swap those sections with themes that are relevant for your lecture, for instance. And then we have ranking questions and different questions formats. And I can send this out after the webinar, but I just wanted to show concrete examples of how this could be used. So I now copied the prompts from the Mentimeter prompt guide, and I added some context. So let's say that this was a lecture, then I added the context of the theme for today's lecture into these prompts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy that prompt and this is for a segmented multiple choice question. I really like that feature as well, where you can create one multiple choice question, and then you can create a second multiple choice question, and then segment those, so you can see what, if Julia answered that on the first one, you can see what she answered on the second one. And there you can start mapping their conceptual understanding. And you also force students to think and try to understand and grasp the concepts of the teaching session. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to Claude, which is a language model similar to ChatGPT. And I'm adding the prompt. And I also actually added a text. We're going to publish a ebook, which I've been also combined with this webinar, working with Mentimeter on, which is called Thinking is Hard. This is just a preview, a sneak peek, but I think everyone here will have this when it's finished, maybe in a month or so. And I added that also into this prompt, giving it more context. So it grasped the basics of the topic of this lecture, and then I send it out, and then we will design 2 multiple choice questions that I can use in Mentimeter. And as you see here, the students are to assess what's the most valuable potential benefit of AI tools. And for the second question, how over-reliance of AI tools might undermine critical thinking. But there is no clear answers. All these answers could be right, and so they need to prioritize. Yeah, so that is one example. I could do one more for ranking, or one more for the 2x2 grid question. But I think I can rather show you an example. This is the prompt guide example that I've used. So these are just business. I took a random curriculum, like course description from our business school, and then asked it to generate questions. And you see that here is the segmented multiple choice questions, where you can see what the students answered in the previous questions. Yeah, or in the 2x2 grid question here. Yeah, so this is how I try to implement this at BI, and trying to bridge how they can use language model as a tool, as teaching tool, basically to help them design for more in-depth questions. And of course, this could be applied in Mentimeter, but also in seminars or in more manual ways of learning. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Örjan. And as Ostra has put into the chat, we have an ebook coming called Thinking Hard, The Importance of Deep Learning in Higher Education. And those of you that have said yes to Marketing for Mentimeter when registering for this webinar will get it. And others will be able to find it on our website and social media very soon. So stay tuned, but it's in the works, so we'll have it soon. All right, let's take some more questions. We still have 10 minutes to go. So Örjan, should we apply specific rules for use of AI to your students or leave them to use it freely?
The problem is that they are using it regardless of what we tell them to do. So I think it's difficult to control. In our sector in Norway, we have some available AI tools, but they are not compatible to ChatGPT or Claude. So the students is rather paying $25 a month for those tools, making it difficult for us to monitor and implement it, because we're basically not allowed. So that's one challenge that is really important. I think we should all institutions should work on having a multi-purpose language model like ChatGPT, and make it good enough so that both students and faculty choose that platform instead of ChatGPT. Then we can start to implement it constructively. And then when it comes to rules, is of course academic integrity on term papers is an issue. I don't have any good solutions to that. We have at BI, we have a declaration of AI use that students are supposed to fill out when they are writing an exam. But the effectiveness of that depends heavily on the course responsible and whether he or she has talked to students about why they should fill this out. But the students are saying, why should I? And how does it affect my grade? And yeah, so I don't know.
All right, thanks. How do we find out about these Mentimeter tools? There was a lot I was not aware of. Well, stay tuned for the ebook. That's going to be even more around that. And of course, feel free to join any of the other webinars that we have upcoming, where we talk about Mentimeter. I also actually have a little section at the end here, so I will show that in a second, where you can sign up if you want to know even more, and we will also bring you even more content on this topic. So feel free to fill that out in a second when I bring that up. How can you encourage active learning? A very broad question for you here, Örjan.
Yeah, that's difficult. And in fact, as we talked about earlier, it's natural for humans as living creatures to prefer the comfortable. And active learning is not comfortable. So I think it's interesting when you ask students about what do you prefer and what do you learn the most from? You often get different answers. So it's difficult to encourage them for active learning. But I think it's important to take the learning outcomes seriously. So we need to, if the learning outcomes demand that students are able to actively do this or actively do that, then we need to design for that as well. So we need to talk with students about why active learning is important, and we need to begin with that from the start. Just build that learning culture from the beginning. Yeah, I think that's important, and maybe sometimes we need to force them. Just having attendance as a part of the grade, for instance.
Yeah, and I can also chip in here, of course, Mentimeter as a tool is to encourage active learning or engagement in general. So I think it's one tool in the toolbox that you can certainly use. The experience that I have is that it's a lot easier for the students to speak up if they see input from other students. It's always very hard and uncomfortable, just as Örjan mentioned, to speak from nothing, because you're also kind of exposing yourself a little bit. So that's something that I see being used quite effectively and successfully with many lecturers or educators in general. Bring up the insights from the group, and that makes it easier to encourage active learning and active participation, at least in a group, because then you don't feel as exposed and it doesn't feel quite as uncomfortable. So that's probably a way that I would also encourage and think about encouraging active learning.
Yeah, great point. And I also would add business relevance or work-life relevance. We have a successful course at BI now called Doing Sustainable Business for all bachelor students, where we just changed everything about the course. And now they are just doing things that they would have done in the business community, like having a meeting with the steering group of a company, and doing things that they need to do when they're finished. So that also is a way to designed for active learning, because they have to do it like that, because that's what they're supposed to do when they're finished.
Very good point. Relevancy, of course, is always very important. Lovely. I'll just breeze through the last slides, and then we can finalize with the last questions. But I also wanted to share some resources to further help you. We do have some of our online courses on Mentimeter Academy if you want to dig deeper into learning about Mentimeter specifically. We also have some specific topics there, such as inclusive teaching and so forth. We also have quite a lot on our YouTube page. We have some customer stories. There's going to come one out with Örjan and BI soon too, so stay tuned. And we also have quite a lot of help articles in our help center, which is a bit more practical. If you want to set things up, you will find most guides there on how to do that step by step. And please feel free to reach out to a really helpful support team. If you have any questions, something is not working, they are usually answer really fast and are really helpful. So feel free to use them. All right. Well, I will probably skip through this one because I do want to make sure that we have time for this one. If you would like to learn more about getting Mentimeter for your institution or hear more about Mentimeter in general, as mentioned before, please feel free to fill this in. It will not pop up on the screen. It's more for you to fill in, and then we see it on our backend later. So it will, if you type your name in here, it will not show up on the screen. So that could be good to know as well. But while potentially some are doing that, I will bring up some more questions for the last 4 minutes. I will I will put you on the spot there again, Örjan, for the last 4 minutes. All right. Should we, rather than changing our assessment practice because of AI, maybe overhaul the entire way of thinking that grading is the most important thing in higher education? What do you think about that, Örjan?
Should we, rather than changing our assessment practice, because I have entire thinking that grading is the also overhauled? I guess that means
Not
remove
anymore, like subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should do that, but at the same time, it's difficult to change because it's so embedded into our culture. So students are very concerned with grades, and many faculty is very concerned with testing knowledge, assuring that they know the topics of their subjects. So yeah, absolutely. But I don't have a good strategy or solution to that problem.
It's for sure the $1 million question.
Yeah.
Something that I hear becoming even more and more important quite often is the journey towards the grade becomes even more important. So formative assessment and checking things along the way, having presentations, which at least not for now cannot be done with AI. I see that being quite relevant many times. So trying to catch the whole journey for the student rather than just one time at an exam. I see that sometimes being one way to tackle it. But for sure, it's a difficult question, and there's a lot of things to take into consideration, and it's hard to change things overnight. We'll have to do it step by step for sure.
Yeah, but I totally agree. Like if we could change from results to process, that would be a huge step in the right direction.
Certainly. All right, let's take one more question. Any tips on AI literacy resources?
Yeah, actually, I have one specific that I really like. I can see if I can. No, I can. No, there it is. Can I just send it in the chat? I like this one very much, which just wraps up what AI literacy is, and very much related to rhetorical AI literacy. So using that for writing and reading. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Örjan, for participating today. Really nice insights, really good answers to the questions. So thank you so much for spending time with us, and hopefully for everyone here it's been really insightful. We don't have too much time left, but definitely feel free to fill this in if you're staying on to the Menti. I will not move from this slide now. So we would love to hear what you learned and what you will do differently as a result of attending this session. You will also get to see this, of course, once we send out the slides, so you can get the insights from your peers as well. But that was everything from us today. We are right on time, so thank you so much for today, and I will hopefully see many of you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.